And Minister, there are other physical pressures. The Policing Board recently released figures showing that public confidence in the police was now at an 84% satisfaction rating. That's a very pleasing success story. However, I can only assume that it is among the other 16% that we find those mindless people who are responsible for the 1,200 injuries sustained by police officers, mostly from assaults on duty. Each year, around 3,000 officers are assaulted to some degree in the execution of their duty. If the public are increasingly satisfied with their police, some of them sure have a funny way of showing it. Except it's not funny. It's extremely worrying. For a start, the number of frontline officers in a PSNI of 7,100 is at most around 4,000. That makes the risk to a frontline officer of being injured, never mind assaulted, at being at least 1 in 3. Minister, that is totally unacceptable. Too much is being expected of officers for the almost certain prospect of being assaulted and injured to be tolerated. First, it means that injured officers may be off work and unavailable for duty. That increases the pressures on remaining officers and leads to higher operational costs. Secondly, I'm not convinced that the courts understand in their sentencing policy that if Northern Ireland is to become a normal society, then assaults on officers must be severely punished. And I'm sorry to say, Minister, the introduction last week of fixed penalties for drunkenness and disorderly behaviour may increase police efficiency in dealing with low-level crime, but I hope it doesn't lead to a downgrading of the unacceptability of public behaviour so that attacks on the police will become viewed as merely high spirits. An attack on a police officer at any level is an attack on society and requires a stronger response from the courts and this community. We cannot go on being the punch bags for the dysfunctional elements of our society. Now, we still have some way to go as a police service before we see the end to the hostility which was traditionally directed at the RUC and now manifests itself against the police service of Northern Ireland. The police service has been transformed to meet the new requirements of oversight and accountability. Yet too many people within Northern Ireland society seem unable or unwilling to make a similar transformation, or even, if Monday's polls in the Belfast Telegraph are to be believed, prepared to encourage their family members to play a civic role in joining the police. A hardcore are determined to lag behind in the past, venting deep-seated animosities against the police through violence, ranging from drunken assaults to carefully planned murder attacks. Now, the sentences accorded last month to the murderers of our colleague Constable Stephen Carroll sent out the wrong message. In England and Wales, thanks to a former Home Secretary David Blunkett, the minimum sentence for the murder of a police officer is 30 years. In the Republic of Ireland, it is a mandatory 40 years. We have persistently in Northern Ireland, for some reason, operated a policy of under-sentencing the murderers of police officers. And what I find totally unforgivable is that police officers murdered in Britain or Ireland have been usually killed in the course of a crime such as violent robbery. In Northern Ireland, the sole purpose of the crime is the deliberate and premeditated murder of the police officer, a public servant working on behalf of the entire community. How this fails to attract the most severe life sentence possible is inexplicable. Inexplicable, that is, unless you believe that claiming a political motive somehow reduces the gravity of the murder. The judiciary need to understand that this feeble defence ended 14 years ago with the signing of the Good Friday Agreement. Now, to his immense credit, Lord Justice Girvan, the trial judge, has admitted that his judicial colleagues, and I quote, are not free to act in accordance with their unfettered viewpoint. I welcome, Minister, your announcement of a review into the sentencing policy for murder in the context of what is handed down in the rest of the United Kingdom. Can I suggest that while you're at it, you include the sentencing policy for assaults on police and those who are engaged in riot situations? The full outrage of the people of Northern Ireland must be reflected in future sentences. Last week, the judiciary in Birmingham were in no doubt of their duty or the public mood when they handed out sentences of up to 30 years for the attempted murder of police officers by armed rioters. Whereas here in Northern Ireland, we are expected to accept that 14 years imprisonment is an appropriate punishment for the murder of a police officer because the perpetrator happens to be under 21 years of age. Let's be frank about this. The convicted murderers of Stephen Carroll got off too lightly. We demand that life should mean just that, a whole life sentence, no matter what age the perpetrator. Minister, if we don't take this opportunity to persuade young would-be murderers that a life in prison awaits them, then you, as a Minister for Justice, are failing to protect our officers and you're failing to deter the terrorists.